when we had him dedicated to the Lord when he was about a month old. The pastor was just going through the normal dedication thing that they do. At the end of it, he got serious and looked at us and he said, "This child will be a voice to his generation."
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Follow to Lead podcast, a Christian leaders podcast powered by EBEB Solutions, energy benefits for every business. Go to ebebsolutions.com today and get your free energy audit. It'll show you how tax savings could be right at your fingertips through some energy savings measures. Go to ebebsolutions.com today and tell them Tony sent you. Friends, today on the podcast, a little bit of a different feel. Steve and Jenia Williams, who are two of the sweetest people you'll ever meet. They also happen to be the parents of Grammy Award-winning Zach Williams. They tell their story about Zach being a prodigal, someone who's left and waited so long to come back, specifically to the faith. This is such a good conversation around what it means to be steadfast, what it means to be encouraging and loving, even when you don't like the person or the choices that they're making is probably a better way to say that. It's such a good dialogue. And really, Steve has a great heart that I know you're going to love to hear. So now here's a quick word from our partners in my conversation with Steve and Jenia Williams. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited today to have some incredible parents of a Grammy Award-winning artist, Steve and Jenia Williams, parents to Zach. Guys, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
You know, I mentioned before we hit record that this year we're wrestling with the 12 most Googled leadership questions. And so every month we're asking guests to wrestle with this question. And today's question is perfect for you guys. And the question is this: as leaders, how do we motivate and inspire our team during uncertain times? As leaders, how do we motivate and inspire our team during uncertain times? As you guys think about that, what are some of the answers that pop into your head from experience and maybe motivation when it felt really hard?
Encouragement, for one thing. For me, when you mentioned that, I was a nurse for many years and I worked in education. And I think that as a leader, you should strive to be positive, someone who is very encouraging, but not afraid to maybe approach someone with things that you see going wrong. As Christians, I think that's very important to be positive, and I think that it's important to be a motivator, to encourage someone that if they're struggling, that there's always a way to get through that.
One thing, I was self-employed my whole life. I had a drywall business, and Zach worked with me for a number of years, probably close to 20 years in all. 2014 was the last year he worked with me. But I think as being the boss or being a leader, you've got to show people that you're not any better than they are, and whatever needs to be done, you need to put the first step forward and do whatever it is. In our business, the drywall business, it's a messy and it's not a glamorous job. You get mud all over you, you get sheetrock dust all over you, and but you just got to be able to step in there and do what needs to be done and let the people know that you're not better than them, and if you do, they're a whole lot more willing to do whatever needs to be done. My brother told me just the other day, and he worked with me for about 30 years. And whenever I retired 2 or 3 years ago, I turned the business over to him. I just said, you've worked with me, just take it and go with it. And I've been helping him just a little bit. He's been real busy, and so I've helped him a little bit the last couple of months. And he told me the other day, he said, now I know what all you went through, because now I'm the boss and I'm having to deal with these people, and I'm having to go back and fix stuff that somebody else has messed up. So he said, I'm just now beginning to understand, where you were coming from all those years.
I love that. I think encouragement and steadfastness and some of those things that you pointed out are huge. How do you encourage yourself? Like, Jenia, you mentioned the idea of like showing up and encouraging your team. How do you find encouragement internally when externally things feel like they're going to the absolutely wrong direction?
Yeah.
Well, about the only thing you can do is pray.
Right.
Trust God. I mean, seriously, that's where I go.
We, like I said, Jeannie was a nurse, and of course I worked construction work for almost 40. I mean, there were times when we'd either have too much work or not enough work, and we really had to rely on God and had to believe that he was going to meet our needs, because we had kids to support and ourselves to support. It was through all of that we were able to really appreciate and see how God has really worked in our lives and in our kids' lives over the years.
One of the things about your guys' story that I've come to appreciate is you guys met at a really early age and have been going to steady ever since. I'm curious if you could tell me your love story. I'm a romantic at heart. I know it was early. It was like 8th grade and 9th grade. And so give us the details. How did you win her, sweep her off her feet?
He didn't have to. Actually, when I was in the 8th grade, I was a cheerleader. He was a basketball player.
Never doubted it.
For some reason, he was really handsome. And I thought, oh my gosh, I really like him. And I liked the way he was. I mean, his actions. And
I had hair back then, though.
I did too, a lot more. But I thought that's just who I want to marry one day. And somehow it worked.
I think we both knew early on that we were meant for each other. And it wasn't always pretty those first few years we were married. I was a pretty selfish person and did a lot of stupid things, drank too much, dabbled in drugs. It wasn't pretty those first 3 years of marriage, but God brought us through it.
We were both raised in Christian homes, but we didn't always walk the Christian life initially when we were young. I wasn't perfect either. So I'm thankful to God that he kept us together all those years.
Yeah, looking back now, if you guys were sitting across from a young couple, maybe a couple that's newly married, and one of them is going to do their own business, a lot like you, Steve, or they may have know Jesus but not following Jesus. What are some of the pro tips that you would give them? Because how long you guys been married now?
53 years, going on 54.
Be 54 in June.
So 54 years of mostly marital bliss. What are your pro tips?
What are your what?
Pro tips.
Pro tips.
Pro tips. Well, you better find Jesus at a very at the very beginning of your marriage. And we didn't have
it a lot easier.
We didn't have him the first 3 years that we were married, and we went through some very, very rough times. Jesus was the thing that put us together, and that's what we used to tell Zach before he came to the Lord. He would come to us at times, and he'd be either drunk or hungover or just down in the dumps. And he would come to us and wanting to know what he needed to do, what could make his life better. And the only thing we would tell him is, son, you need Jesus in your life. And he didn't want to hear that. But that's what we would tell him. And I don't know the number of times we told him that. And, finally one day it took root.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting is that it's hard to give the truth to somebody who doesn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
And so your guys' devotional is really designed for leaders, parents, grandparents who are kind of praying for that prodigal to come home. And because that's your story. And so first, I'm Could you give us a working definition of prodigal if maybe someone is hearing that for the first time and isn't exactly sure how that applies?
Well, I mean, really, a prodigal could be anybody that's far from Jesus. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a kid. It can be an adult. It can be, you know, there's prodigals sitting in our church pews on Sunday morning, that go to church maybe thinking they're doing the right thing, but they're lost.
I think there's probably some Christians that are prodigals,
Amen.
That have just had maybe some bad circumstances in their life that caused them to kind of turn their back on the Lord, not necessarily making them unsaved, but making them, become far away from God. And so a prodigal can be anyone who loses sight of the Lord or who has never found the Lord.
So one of the things I was thinking about as I was picturing this in my own story, I have 3 kids. My oldest is 20. My youngest is 14, 2 boys and a princess is kind of my world. And one of the things I was thinking about is what I would do as a parent if one of my kids left the Lord, and how internally it must have been anguish and turmoil. And in my story, at least, I think it would be shame. How did you guys deal with those feelings, knowing that really it's not your control, but as a parent, it's so often, or even just as a leader, it feels like it is?
Well, it was tough when your kids don't, I guess, live up to your standards, I guess is how you would say it. They were raised in Christian homes. I don't think either one of them really fully gave their lives to the Lord until later in life. But yeah, it hurts. And when one thing that happened with Zach was in high school, he got in trouble for drugs, and which we weren't really aware of. And we were really surprised. I got a phone call at work one day asking me to come to the school. And before I even got to the school, it was on the news.
Mm-mm.
He was a high school basketball player. So little town,
very good basketball player.
A little town, but he lost opportunities for scholarships. And so I'm telling you, it was a hard thing to get through those years, but we never turned our back on our child. And it was embarrassing. In a small town, everybody knows who you are. And like I said, before I even got home, my nephew had already seen it on news and stuff. And of course, those things don't happen anymore. But it was tough. But all you can do is love your kids and try to redirect them into the way that they need to be going.
Yeah, it was difficult those years because like Jeannie said, they were brought up. I led worship at different times in churches we were in, and always played in the praise band. And I mean, they were at church on Sunday morning, Sunday nights, Wednesday nights. Whenever we had music practice, a lot of times they would go. So the seed was planted. It just took a while for it to come to fruition. But it was very tough.
One of the things that's interesting that I think as Christians we often wrestle with is this idea of like our life and obedience to Jesus should also determine our success. And yet, Zach's story is he doesn't come to Christ until he's 33. And so that kind of journey, he was really successful prior to that. As Christians, how did you guys wrestle with the idea that like he's continuing to not be close to the Lord, and yet by the world's measure is rather successful?
He was. I mean, he was successful with what he was doing, his songwriting and his music. I mean, it was really good before he ever came to the Lord. But he was one miserable person. He was searching, he was looking, but he just wasn't looking in the right place. I mean, he was, he will tell you during those days he was miserable.
Yeah.
He wasn't happy.
Well, there's no peace without the fruit of the Spirit, right? Like
I mean, I know Crystal, his wife, said something in the book about, people think you're the most happy person, the most successful person, there is. But she said, you're not. You're just, you're just putting up a front, really. But no,
even when he was in the rock music world, we supported him as our son and as a person who was writing music and had abilities that we saw in him. We did not support his lifestyle. I mean, and most anybody around here will tell you that every time they played anywhere close, we were there to listen, And so many of his songs had gospel overtones. We could just sense it and knew that he was searching. We knew he was searching, and we had to. We didn't have to. We loved him, period.
Yeah.
And tried to show that to him, and just tried to be an example to him and to anybody around him.
When his career began to change, I would imagine your life shifted a little bit as well. Like you said, you guys grew up in a pretty small world, and now here you are doing podcasts with people in Southwest Ohio. And you guys are on the full blown media circuit. How has this kind of like whirlwind experience of his, international fame really shifted the way that you guys see the world? I imagine that has to be a little bit jarring at times, like it doesn't feel real or something.
Yeah, I mean, we talked probably about doing a book or a devotional probably at least 3 or 4 years ago. It was kind of tossed around a little bit, and whenever we finally decided to start writing some stuff down a couple of years ago, our whole thing was, who are we?
Right.
We're just
average people.
But when we would go to concerts and people would, find out we were Zach's parents, they'd start asking questions. Well, how did you hang on so long? How did you get through all of the times when he wasn't living for the Lord? And yeah, it's been different. But, our whole thing for putting this together, with the help of Robert Nolan and Zach and Crystal, they do some parts in the book. But our whole thing was if we could just reach a few people.
And
give some people hope.
Give some people hope. That was, we were talking the other day, I'm really not that envious, of Zach, because I appreciate and I love what he's doing, the music he's writing and the touring that he's doing. But, he can't get out when he does concerts. He can't get out and walk through the crowd or mingle or do anything like that. I mean, people would just, be on top of him. And but people think he's somebody special, and he is in God's eyes, but he's just a person. And
he's been given a gift.
He's been given a gift, and he's using it to the best of his ability. People are drawn, to what he's doing, drawn to his lyrics, to his music.
There's even Christian people. There's so many needs.
Yeah,
and they just, it's just, his music to me reminds them of who they are in Christ. Just gives them some hope for the future, for their lives, for their kids. One thing, and I hope it's okay to say this, one thing I want people to know about this book is we're nobodies. I mean, we're not anybody, but we are a child of the King, or both of us are children of the King. And we learned once we got saved and gave our hearts to the Lord early on to begin to develop our faith. And I think that's one thing that is very important in your Christian walk, is to try to do your best to develop faith in God. And I wanted to share one little thing about when we, let's see, before Zach was born, after we got saved, we were led to go to Pensacola to a Bible college. He went to a Bible college, and that's when Zach came along. And but during this time we lived there, after Zach was born, we also had a daughter, and she had a hernia. Well, at the time, I'm telling you, we were living by faith. We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have insurance, and we were just trusting God to meet our needs. And we went to the Lord, who is a great physician, and just asked him to heal her. And every time I changed her diaper, I would lay my hands on her hernia and say, "Thank you, Lord, for healing her." But after a few months, there was no hernia.
Wow.
And she's never had any problems since then. But you just, things aren't instantaneous. You have to trust God. And even though things don't look like things are changing, if you're believing God for something, they're changing somewhere, somehow. So, I mean, we just learned early on to believe what the word says and trusting.
Steve, as you were telling those stories, you were kind of overcome with emotion. I would love to kind of hear about that emotion and how that lives inside of you. I think it's a beautiful thing.
Well, when you see something come to pass, I know you've probably heard this, but Zach had a word of prophecy spoken over him when we had him dedicated to the Lord when he was about a month old. The pastor was just going through the normal dedication thing that they do. And at the end of it, he got serious and looked at us, and he said, "This child will be a voice to his generation." And so we've lived with that. But the way he was living before he came, Jesus, I mean, he wasn't a mean person, but he was rebellious. He was rebellious, toward God. And I think he'll probably tell you if he hadn't have, turned his life over to Jesus, he would have split hell wide open. And to see somebody that was, I mean, we used to, I guess you could say beg or plead or whatever, try to get him to come to church, and he didn't want any part of it. But to see the change, that's taken place in his life, I mean, it's just amazing. It's a God thing. I can be listening to some of his music, listen to a lyric or something, and I mean, it'll just hit me. I think, it's just a God thing. And I don't know. I think maybe as I've gotten older and just have been able to witness the goodness of God down through the years, I just get overcome, with praise and thanks to God for what he's done in our lives. It's just, it's just amazing.
That's beautiful. I love it. I think tears are a tremendous act of worship that we often don't give enough credit to God for, because without them, they're just a pure expression of love. And, we don't cry over things we don't care about, right. Good or bad, right? So, one of the interesting things about the way that you guys wrote the book is that it's a 30-day devotional. If you haven't picked it up yet, I recommend it. And every chapter, you kind of give a disclaimer on who the writer is, which I really appreciate it. And the chapters aren't very long, and it's designed to go with music. And then there's the kind of the story, and then the text is interwoven in there, the scriptural text, and then it ends with the reflection process. I'm curious from your guys' creative process, how was the writing journey for you both? How was the process of putting it together and having so many different voices in it? And that process, writing a book, is like, it's tedious and ongoing, and it feels like it's never going to end sometimes. And I'd be interested to hear what your experience was like.
Well, when we started, we had no idea what in the world we were doing. But thankful, Robert Nolan, he helped us a whole lot. He's done many books, and he actually helped Zach with his book, and he helped us to kind of get things, I guess, designed in a specific order or whatever. But as far as, writing the book, it came from our own thoughts and history and things that we wanted to say. And I had told him and Zach both early on, I do not want to write just a book, just to be writing a book. I want something that, well, we both did, that is going to be a help to someone. And I liked the way that, it was, I guess, Robert's idea, maybe Zach's, I don't know for sure, to put a song with each day. But then we chose which chapters went with which songs, to try to fit it in there. But it was a long process, but I'm thankful for it. I think it turned out pretty good. I'm excited, and I do. My prayer is that whoever reads it, they'll get hope from that, or hope and help, and how to approach God, and how to trust God, and how to just believe that their prodigal story is not finished yet.
Anything to add there, Steve?
No, she did a pretty good job.
She crushed it. She crushed it. Here's one of the things that I'm always interested about is that as the book has gotten into more people's hands, how's the vulnerability of your story? And because you guys are very vulnerable in the book, from your roots to your experiences with Zach's rebellious nature to just, even your own stuff along the way, how has it felt to have your story out there in a very public kind of way?
Well, I just believe, I know we are opening up our lives, it's pretty vulnerable, some of the stuff that we share in there, but I'm just hoping that and believing that people will see that we're just average people. And the whole reason for doing this is just to give folks some hope. I know we tried to, and we were late on it. We tried to get our pastor and our Celebrate Recovery pastor and another man that has a John 3:16 ministry here in North Central Arkansas. It's a ministry for, people that are all kinds of addictions, drugs, alcohol, that sort of thing. We tried to get their endorsements in there, but we waited too late to be able to get them in. The book had done gone to printing. But, my pastor told me that, if people will take this and read it, he said, I really believe that, a lot of people will be helped. And, we've heard that from, several different people. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's perfect. That's perfect.
But
I think that it opens, it makes us vulnerable, but it also lets people see that just because we have a son who made it in the Christian music world doesn't mean we were perfect parents, because we weren't.
No,
it's good.
No, we all have our flaws, but Jesus is a perfect one, and we have him living on the inside of us. So that sure.
One of the things that's unique about my community, we call them the bold ones, is that they love to pray. And as this book gets out into the world, what's the prayer that kind of accompanies it?
Well, I was thinking this morning about a verse in 55, and I'll just do 55:11, and it says, So shall my word be that goes forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it will accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereunto I sent it. So, if we get God's word out there, it's not gonna come back void.
Yeah.
It's gonna accomplish what God, wants it to accomplish. We planted the seed in Zach and our daughter Amy's life, many, many years ago. And we watered and watered and watered. but it's God that gives the increase. But I just believe when it gets out there that God's going to do a work in people's lives.
So good. Okay, one of the questions that I have one more question for you, but before I ask it, I know that everyone's going to want to figure out where to pick up their copy of the book. So where can people learn more about you guys and Heart for the Prodigal, the 30-day devotional around journey, mercy, and redemptive and unfailing love?
Well, the book is available on klove.com, and I just looked today, and it's available on amazon.com.
Hey!
It's available for pre-order. The actual copies won't be available for purchase until May 19th, and it can be purchased where most anyone purchases their books, in most bookstores and hopefully Hobby Lobby and different places that we buy books.
Excellent. Okay, my last question for you both. This is an individual question, so I'll ask you to answer separately. One of the things that we're asking all of our guests this year is about the greatest leader that they've ever met. So here are kind of the parameters. In your lifetime, who is the greatest leader that you've ever met in the flesh? So we all know that Jesus is the greatest leader ever. No Jesus answers. We want to hear about a real person who's impacted you, a real person in your life who's impacted you in the flesh.
I'll go first.
Gosh, there's a bunch. Goodness, that would be a hard one. Go ahead.
Let me go ahead. My grandpa Williams, he was a Baptist preacher. He passed away in 1974, and we didn't come to faith till 1975. So I wasn't a Christian while he was still alive, but he had a great impact on not only me but my cousins and everybody that knew him. He was an old timer. He was born in 1898 and was 76 years old when he died. But he was a man of God, and today he has 4 great grandsons, counting Zach, that are in full-time ministry.
Wow.
He has one cousin, or I have a cousin that's an ordained minister. And then there was 3 or 4 of us that, played in worship bands and led worship at different times. So I would say Grandpa Williams had probably the greatest influence on my life. And I've been around a lot of great preachers, but Grandpa Williams would have to be right up there with the best of them.
That's good.
I'm going to have to, it's really hard. There's a bunch of people I could say, but I think probably one of the greatest leaders and ministers would be Franklin Graham. Billy Graham. I think that he lived a life of example, and that he brought so many people into the kingdom of God. Like I said, there's been many more in my life, but as far as the greatest, I could say probably made a big impact was him. And I know for my daughter-in-law, she was saved at a Billy Graham Billy Graham revival.
That's so good. So good. Guys, it has been so fun getting to chat with you. Thank you so much for taking the time and being so generous and doing this kingdom work that God has called you to. I know it's a little uncomfortable, but we also know that you're helping so many leaders along the way. So on behalf of my entire community, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you having us.
I told you guys what a great conversation with 2 loving people. I was blown away by just their heart and their willingness and just who they are as people. It's such goodness. As always, friends, forever thankful for you, the bold ones. Our coaching question this week is, who in your life needs you to be steadfast in prayer? Who in your life needs you to be steadfast in prayer? Until next week, remember, I'm embarrassingly easy to get a hold of. If there's anything I can do to support you, don't hesitate to let me know. Tony at TWMilt or on Instagram at TWMilt. And remember, if you want to follow Jesus, you must be willing to move.